And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your purveyor here at Whiskey Politics. Thanks for joining us. You can find me at davesussman.com, theindependent.io, The Range Broadcasting Network, YouTube, as well as all of our podcast applications. Specifically, you can find us at Apple Podcast. Please like and subscribe, give a comment. It helps others find us. Spotify, as well as the Ricochet Network, where you definitely want to join and become a member so you can communicate and have discussions and write articles that will be seen by the powerful people that are creating the rules that we all have to live by. Speaking of rules that we have to live by, the debates that just took place, the first one, we've got the second one coming up with VP Pence and Kamala Harris next week. So no matter when you're hearing this, it may be before or after. But I'm just going to say this up front before we bring on our guest, David Bossie. You know, okay, if you've been watching us for years, you know that I call it like I see it. I support the president's policies. I am a firm believer in his economic policies. I think they're good for the country. I think he's fighting back the Marxist push. So please don't take what I'm about to say right now as some never Trump guy or whatever it may be. I'm not. But the first debate was a disaster. And I know that the spin machine has gone into overload, that if you watch the debates a second time or you read the content of the debates after you first watched it on Tuesday night, then Trump looks a lot better. He comes across a lot better. And I would tend to agree. But I'm also somebody that is very cognizant of the fact that Marketing 101 is that in business, as well as in relationships, by the way, you really have a first impression chance only. And most people outside of many of our viewers, outside of us, politicos, that we are kind of political junkies that are talking about this, most normal people watch the debate in abject horror, and they didn't go back to it afterwards. I'm going to be asking David about this, because I don't think it was just Donald Trump. I think Biden was awful. I think Chris Wallace was absolutely atrocious. Seriously, Chris, I respect what you do, but the questions, it wasn't even so much the interruptions. That was annoying. It was the questions that he was asking, as if the DNC had written the questions for Chris Wallace to ask. Critical race theory. White supremacy, global warming, continually going over and over and over COVID. It was really, really frustrating, Chris Wallace. And I as somebody that respects what you do, I see you asking hard questions on your show to people from the left as well. So I thought you would play it down the center. But the questions that you were asking, specifically of Donald Trump, were questions that were born from the left. They represent the narrative that the left have been pushing. And now, later this week, it's Thursday, we're still talking about white supremacy. Trump answered that question 4 years ago, that very same question that you posed, Chris Wallace, in the primaries of 2016.
I totally disavow the Ku Klux Klan. I totally disavow David Duke. I've been doing it now for 2 weeks. You're probably about the 18th person that's asked me the question. It was very clear. That question was also talked about in the form of groups. I want to know, which groups are you talking about? You have to tell me which groups. Ultimately, he got to the Ku Klux Klan, which obviously I'm going to disavow. And by the way, if you look on my Twitter account, almost immediately after the program, they were disavowed again. You know, it's amazing. When I do something on Twitter, everybody picks it up, goes all over the place. But when I did this one, nobody ever picks it up. Take a look at my Twitter account.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Senator Rubin.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do that?
So put that to the side for a minute. President Trump, and I'm going to ask our guest here in just a couple of moments on this, because David Bossie works in the Trump campaign, okay? President Trump needs to understand something. President Trump has a very abrasive approach to things. And a lot of his supporters like it. Evan Sayet says, every time we have him on the show, he fights. And that absolutely stokes the energy of his base. But the people watching the debates, and will continue to watch the debates, are not his base. What President Trump needs to do is he needs to be going after the people. Stephen Moore, Trump economic advisor, he's on Trump's economic task force recovery right now. Even Stephen Moore admits this, that more people don't like Trump than like him. But enough people may support Trump's policies to push the personality that they don't like to the side. That's just reality 101. And if you're a huge MAGA type, you may not like what I'm saying right now, but folks, we've got to think big picture here. And what Trump did on debate number 1 is he turned off a tremendous number of people that he needs to bring on, not because of the substance, but because of his tone, because of continuing to interrupt. And I know that a lot of people have said this already. He should have just let Biden bury himself. If you allow Biden to talk for more than 15 to 20 seconds, Joe Biden is going to confuse himself. Let people see that. But it's also the style and the mannerisms. I'm old enough to remember State of the Union 2020. Remember, before COVID, the economy was doing great. He stood in front of the chamber of both houses of Congress. Remember, Rush Limbaugh was in the upper deck and all of those incredible guests. And Trump was funny. He was human. He showed his warmth and style and substance. And it wasn't that he didn't skewer his enemies. He most certainly did. But he did it in a way, remember all the white Nancy Pelosi's women all dressed in white dresses? And they were just sitting there. The lowest unemployment, Black Americans in American history. And they were all sitting there with their hands under them. It looked awful. Trump killed it. It may have been one of the best State of the Unions I've seen in my lifetime. He needs, during the debates, to be State of the Union Trump. He needs to be speaking to the people that are uncomfortable with President Trump's bull in a china shop, abrasive approach. And what we saw on debate number 1 was abrasive. It was bullying. And I was with a group of people. I went to a small gathering to watch this, and everybody in that room was a Trump supporter. And I knew 6-7 minutes into the debate that, Houston, we've got a problem. And it got worse. And no longer were we listening to what Trump was saying, but we were watching how Trump was acting. And combining that with the tag team of Biden and Wallace, it made for a miserable experience for anybody watching this, whether you support the president, support Biden, or whatever it may be. Secondly, Trump lost a lot of opportunities. When the idea of racism comes up, and he talks about that the law enforcement supports him, very braggadocious. All these different organizations support me. You know what? Talk about the fact that more Black Americans support this president in recent polling than any Republican president ever. And that's due to the economic policies that he's implemented, lowest unemployment that Blacks have ever experienced, Hispanics as well. He needed to talk about that. And when it came to the economic policies, Trump absolutely just whiffed it. I'm sorry, I may be angering some big diehard MAGA supporters right now, but this needs to be said. Where was the discussion regarding Joe Biden's tax increases for people making more than $400,000 a year, and comparing that to the fact that the 30 million small business owners in the United States, many of them file with their joint tax returns as an individual, or they file as sole proprietors? And a $400,000 income for a business is nothing, especially, let's say it's a restaurant that's earning 3 to 7% margins. Why didn't Trump talk about that? He needed to be speaking to individual business owners that have been closed down because of the Democrat governors across the country due to COVID-19. and the absolute implosion of the small business community. Instead, he was talking about how many law enforcement organizations support him. What are we doing here? And I know that law and order is a big part of this administration's campaign push, but I believe he really, really missed a tremendous number of opportunities on this debate. Maybe Trump wasn't doing well. He came across angry because he feeds on an audience and there was nobody in that audience besides his family/employees. Okay? It was deadly quiet in there. So maybe you need rally Trump. And hopefully with the next debate that's coming up halfway through October, that the town hall format will allow him to better express and have that humane touch. But we all know that the debate is going to be moderated. A Biden guy, the moderator, Steve Sully, I think his name is. So Trump really has to approach this from the standpoint of understanding that he's speaking to people like my mother and the millions of other people that are out there that are deathly afraid of what the left is showing us their hand right now with Antifa and the enabling of the rioting and tax increases and lockdowns and all the things that we know that they are purporting here. But they may not like Trump personally. President Trump, you do have a very warm, just a wonderful human nature. We've seen it, especially supporters at certain times. You got to be relatable. Marketing 101. People do business with people that they know, they like, and they trust. Okay? Well, people feel like they know you. Many of them don't like that. They may not like you, and they may not trust you. Give them reasons. You've got the base. You've got the MAGA rallies. You're going to continue doing that for the next 30 days. Talk to people that are not wearing a red hat and are uncomfortable with the Biden campaign and him obfuscating and being absolutely, he didn't answer any questions about packing the court. He did a Nancy Pelosi. Will you pack the court, Vice President Biden? Well, you're going to have to pass, the bill before you see what's in it. You're going to have to vote for me to see, what I'm going to do. Okay, Chris Wallace, first of all, should have followed up on that. But, so people are uncomfortable with Biden, but we've got to have warmth. Hopefully, President Trump understands that. In the meantime, enjoy our interview with David Bossie. David Bossie has served as president of Citizens United since 2001. He is currently senior advisor to Trump2020 and a presidential appointee to the Commission on Presidential Scholars. In 2016, David served as the deputy campaign manager for Donald J. Trump for president and then deputy executive director of the Presidential Transition Team. In 2015, Bossie was ranked number 2 in Politico's top 50 most influential people in American politics. He is also a New York Times bestselling author, and along with co-author Corey Lewandowski, their latest book, Trump, America First, gives a firsthand and insider account of the Trump administration's quote-unquote battle for the soul of America. Welcome, David. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, and glad that we could fix all the technical snafus here. It's incredible the time that we're living in right now, and I'd love to talk with you more about that, but due to the limited time, we're 2 days out from the debate. A lot of ink, a lot of opinion has been expressed, and you wrote a piece at foxnews.com. You stated, Trump clearly defeats Biden in the first presidential debate. But would you agree, David, that outside of Trump's tried and true supporters, that we saw a relatively large negative reaction to both candidates along with the moderator?
I think that President Trump did exactly what he wanted to do and delivered the message that he wanted to deliver at the debate. He is a fighter for America. He got elected to be a fighter for America. That's what the American people saw on that debate stage. Somebody who is going to fight every single day, including the next 34 days, to get reelected. And he's not going to stand there while Joe Biden is talking about the peace. We must have, Donald Trump's not going to accept the results of the election, and we must have a peaceful transfer of power if I win, because we did the same for you. Well, guess what? They didn't. Okay, Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and James Comey sat in the Oval Office and attempted a soft coup on this president when he was president-elect. So the president is not going to just stand there idly by while Joe Biden is delivering dribble to the American people about what a nice guy I am, and we should all be fair. Well, they weren't fair when they were trying to prosecute people for not doing anything wrong, when they were contriving an investigation. So he's an intense guy. The American people know what they got. They elected him in 2016 to be the change agent, to come to Washington and change the broken status quo. Well, guess what? They feign shock when he actually does it. He actually is changing the way. We could talk about any issue that he has really turned Washington on its head. Middle East peace is a perfect example, but we can get into all of that. But the president of the United States got in Joe Biden's head. That's what he did. He got in his head. He got under his skin. We're going to see, and by the way, 4 years ago, after the first debate at Hofstra University against Hillary Clinton, the same political pundits, the same brainiacs, the same know-it-alls, the same do-nothing know-it-alls that said that Donald Trump's finished. Hillary Clinton mopped him up. Hillary Clinton won the debate handily. Donald Trump's style, it was oppressive, and he bullied her. People don't vote for style. They vote for substance. And this is an election about the substance. This is an election that's about the future of this country. This is an election about what your kids and grandkids, what opportunities they're going to have. Are they going to have socialism, or are they going to have freedom and prosperity? That's what this election is going to come down to.
David, I would agree with that. And when you take a look, and if you revisit the debate and you actually read the text of what Trump was stating compared to what Biden was saying, I think there was a tremendous amount more substance coming from Trump from that perspective. But I have to say this, it's like the Nixon-Kennedy debates that have been bantered about the past few days. But, the idea that if you listen to Nixon on the radio, he won, but if you watch Kennedy on TV, Kennedy won, right? And that we're living in a culture and a society today where this is all about perception and initial perception. And I guess the frustration for a lot of Trump supporters over that first debate was that we didn't see Trump's humanity, his humor, the State of the Union president, because my mom, she doesn't like Trump personally, but she is scared to death of the left. She's scared to death of Joe Biden and what his policies would be. I think the idea of the debates right now, and please disagree with me if you do, is that he shouldn't be. It's not about the base. It's about getting people like my mother, that middle, around the middle, that just wants a reason to vote for Trump.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. Look, this president, he fights. That's who he is. It's in his DNA. And he's not going to allow Joe Biden to just say and do anything and walk all over him. But just like in 2016, the president, then candidate Trump, came at Hillary Clinton in the first debate with one style. And between the first and second debate, he changed it up. He does these things kind of in a psychological warfare sort of way. He's in Joe Biden's head right now, and he's going to reside there rent-free for the next couple of weeks. So at the next debate, we're going to see what the president does, what his approach is like, what is his demeanor, how hard does he come at Joe Biden. But the one thing is, and I just got to say this because it's so ridiculous, but Steve Scully's a friend of mine. I've given talks for C-SPAN and a bunch of students over the years.
He's moderating debate number 2.
He's moderating debate number 2. He's a fantastic guy, and I like him a lot. But he's the moderator for the second debate. The debate commission, which is in the tank for Joe Biden, in our opinion, this is a debate commission that wrecked Donald Trump's microphone in the first debate against Hillary Clinton and would never admit to it. This is Steve Scully worked for Joe Biden. How do you have a moderator that worked for one of the two candidates? He also worked for Teddy Kennedy. I mean, look, people can work for a lot of different people, But wouldn't you think that there's some sort of a, I don't know, ethical conflict for Steve? And I like Steve, and I think Steve is an honest guy. I really do. And so this, I hate to even say it, but how does he allow himself to be put in that position where the debate commission between debate 1 and debate 2 is going to be screaming about changing the rules, okay, and being able to control the microphone? Well, who gets to control the microphone? The moderator. The moderator worked for the opposing candidate. It's truly a remarkable situation to look at. And I think that the debate commission loses a lot of credibility to the American people when this gets litigated over the next few days. I think that they're going to have to make some changes.
I agree with you 100%. And Ted Cruz tweeted a thread this morning on this, and he said, "Look, you know, if we're still going to pretend that the media and the commission isn't biased here, you know, at least have, okay, if you're going to have somebody like Scully, have I don't know, somebody like a Tucker Carlson or even a Sean Hannity, which I don't think would be that great. But you know, I mean, you've got to have somebody on both sides. Have two people representing different media. But let's get to another really important, real pivotal issue here, and that is voting. You know, we've just seen some reports that are coming out right now that Florida, Pennsylvania, and other battleground states are reporting that the number of Republican registrations of new voters is higher than it was in 2016 for Republicans, and Democrats, it's now higher than what Democrats are registering in 2020. That's great news for Republicans. But let's talk a little bit about what we are now seeing with the vote by mail. This is an absolute disaster in the making. I feel like we're all watching a slow motion car crash. We know how this is going to end. What is the White House doing as an insider to try to prevent this from going on 6 weeks?
Yeah, it may be the seminal issue of this election cycle. I mean, what we're doing, look, do I believe that there's an opportunity to have a conversation about mail-in ballots in the future, that future election cycles could have a lot of mail-in ballots? That's fine. But that's after you have policies and procedures and regulatory oversight and congressional oversight, and you have a system that is built to handle the deluge, and a system that is based in science of who's alive and who's dead, who definitely lives there. How are we going to police this? This year, the Democrats are trying, they're so desperate to beat Donald Trump, and they'll do anything to do it. They'll do and say anything, but they're so desperate to beat him that they are willing to change the rules in midstream. People are already voting, and they're changing the rules in different states right now as we speak. So we are, the Republican National Committee, the Trump campaign, is in court all across the country, in different states and different appellate court levels, where we are in court fighting to make sure that every ballot, every legal ballot is counted. It doesn't matter who they vote for. It just needs to be a legal ballot. One person, one vote. We're seeing all of these stories about ballots being dumped in parking lots, in trash barrels, in dumpsters, in a ravine. This is not acceptable. We're seeing stories where people are saying, I got my ballot, I got mail-in ballots in my my mailbox today, and I got 2 for me and 2 for my wife. Okay, we are seeing stories. These are online; they're everywhere. But the news is reporting them, that people are getting ballots for people who haven't lived in these apartments for 5 and 10 years. So that's the problem when you are so desperate to defeat President Trump. You lose sight of what's important. And let me just say this: we've had a lot of tough elections in our history. We've had tough and rumbles. Okay, Hillary and Donald Trump just 4 years ago, but we've had a lot of them in our life in the history of America. What we haven't had is a question over the integrity of our elections. And once we cross this Rubicon, I don't know how we put it back, the toothpaste back into the tube. This is a dangerous, dangerous thing that the Democrats are forcing on to the American people when in fact there's ways to solve this. We can extend absentee ballots. We can extend early voting. We can extend same-day voting. We are putting into place, not we, but the election officials in state after state are putting into place the proper procedures to vote in person if people choose to. And our people, the Trump people, are going to turn out in droves on election day. That's a fact.
We've got David Bossie. He is the author of the newest book with co-author Corey Lewandowski, Trump, America First. And I want to talk about the book here in just a moment. But when you are talking about the rules changing midstream, a lot of people are pointing out potential hypocrisy on both sides of the aisle regarding the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett. We are roughly 30 days now out of an election. And you wrote
34, but
34 days.
34, but I'm the one counting.
And by the time we're recording this on Thursday, folks, so if you're listening to this over the weekend. But you wrote an article again on foxnews.com, and you said that history is on the side of the GOP here. Justice Paul Stevens was nominated and confirmed in just 19 days. Justice Ginsburg herself was nominated and confirmed in 42 days. You said that Senate Republicans should confirm Trump's Supreme Court nominee by Election Day. Do you think that's going to happen? And is the Supreme Court going to be pivotal in this next election?
I certainly do think it happens by Election Day. This is an incredibly qualified judge. She just was confirmed and had an FBI background check to get into the minutia of how you go through this process. But she needs a background check. But she just had one 3 years ago. So the background check is really for 3 years. Okay, not for her entire life, which is only 48 years. So it is it's a process that can be done. It should be done. She's highly qualified. Her intellect is unquestioned. She is considered one of the best law students, one of the best law professors, one of the greatest judges we've seen. She's 48-year-old mother of 7. You would think that the left would want that a woman with 7 children who is a successful professional as a judge and a successful mom is not being hailed across the country as just a new level for women. They want to be, the left loves to talk about this, but then it happens and they're nowhere to be found. They attack her. They attack her religion. They attack her. How can she be a mom? I mean, people on the left said, how can she be a mom and a successful judge?
The feminists are saying that she should be staying home.
Isn't that amazing? It's like the world is dogs and cats living together. It's an amazing thing to watch. But look, she's going to have her day in court in a Senate hearing. The week is October 12th. There's going to be 3 or 4 days of hearing. She's going to be in 2 of those days. And then, the opposition, I'm going to be very interested to see who sits down at a hearing table to oppose her and why. So that's going to be very interesting. But then we're going to move her forward, and she's going to get a vote before Election Day, and she deserves a vote before Election Day. And America is better off on Election Day with a full complement of 9 justices, because with these issues of ballot security, with these issues of the election that are looming, we need 9 justices to make the decision. We don't know which way she's going to vote because we won't know the questions of law until it happens, until something happens. And so, nobody knows how any of the 9 justices at that time will rule. There's just no way to tell.
I think a lot of leftist Democrats, mainstream Democrats, will tacitly admit that they may have overstepped their bounds with Kavanaugh 2 years ago. Do they need to step gingerly here? And if they do attack her on her Catholicism, mainstream religion, how do you think that impacts voting in 2020?
I think this is both of those are very good questions, and I think we won't know until it happens. We see them trying to ramp up an opposition to her, and we'll see if they have the same level of sheer stupidity of like they did with Justice Kavanaugh to, what are they going to do? Charge her with a gang rape? I mean, doing that to her is the same as Justice Kavanaugh. It's outrageous. It was such a violation of the norms and practices. They were so desperate for power to defeat Justice Kavanaugh and try to pay back this president, that they truly maligned purposefully a man, his wife, and their daughters, and put them through this horrible ordeal with no facts.
Yeah.
With absolutely, it was so outrageous. And the American people still remember that. And I think they have to remember that if they push too hard, go too far, there's going to be backlash, and that's going to help us. We don't know what they're going to do, but I do believe that Judge Barrett does help the president, because she's an every man, every woman. She looks, her life story, her success, her family, her education. She just is an every person. And if you look from Pennsylvania across that Iron Range, that where we won in 2016, somebody like her, I believe, helps this president, because it gins up our base in those states. It gets those that are going to watch an attack on Catholicism, whether they're Catholics or not.
Yeah.
They're not going to like it. They're not going to like it, and it's going to gin them up even more. I don't know that it can help their intensity. I know it will help ours.
You and Corey Lewandowski, your latest book, and this is what, your third book together, I think?
It is. I've written all three. He just puts his name on them.
Yeah. I've perused through it. I got the digital copy before our interview, and I got to tell you, it reads incredibly. It's very compelling, because you guys are like flies on the wall, right? I mean, you have meetings, you talk about how COVID impacted just even checking into the White House, and the experience that 99.99% of the people out there won't experience. But it's interesting, because you talk about the unprecedented level of attacks that this president has taken from the Democrats, from impeachment, from Spygate, and so on. Just this week, we saw, very little news was made, by the way, that Comey was interviewed by the Senate on Zoom, and he basically was kind of like, what's his name? Clink. I don't know anything. I never saw anything. I see nothing. A Democrat-sponsored bogus Steele dossier, the FISA, and what he knows about Spygate. There's discussion right now that the Durham report may or may not be coming up before the election. How does any of all of it impact the election, do you think?
God, I'm so furious. Okay, let me just be honest. I'm furious beyond words. Corey and I went through the ringer on all of this stuff. Okay, firsthand. We write about it in the book. In Corey's testimony before Mueller and the Senate and House Intelligence Committees. It's outrageous what people like us had to go through. And then we find out that Obama and Biden and Hillary and Comey and all of their minions at the highest levels of the FBI were running a soft coup against this president-elect from the Oval Office. These people should pay. Somebody needs to pay. And the American people demanded. And we all were told, and I used to be a congressional investigator. I was the chief investigator during the Clinton impeachment stuff. And so, these people in the congressional hearings or congressional committees were told, you can't hold hearings, don't conduct investigations. We can't let you impede the Durham investigation. That's how they put off oversight. Okay. They put off oversight by saying, you might impede, you might interfere, you might delay, you might damage the Durham investigation if you have a bunch of yahoos running around, congressional investigators doing something, especially if you hold public hearings. So we've lost the last year and a half where congressional testimony could have been brought forward. The American people could have learned. There could have been depositions. There could have been discovery using subpoena power of Congress to gain information so that the American people would be much more educated as to where we are and what happened. But instead, it's all been hidden because of the Durham investigation. And now we're 30 some odd days away from Election Day. And there's no way that the Durham grand jury, the Durham group is going to do anything. There will be nothing. There'll be no indictments and there'll be no report between now and Election Day. It would be almost irresponsible for it.
That's what's really frustrating to so many people. I remember being at CPAC the last couple of years, and everybody was saying it's going to drop anytime. It's going to drop anytime. We had Seb Gorka
Right.
on at the beginning of 2019. Sebastian Gorka was on the show, and he said to me, he says, "You just wait. It will be here any moment." You know,
Yeah.
Was that a good
We've been
impression of
told that.
Seb? Yeah.
It's
Last
close.
couple of minutes here for you.
Yeah.
Going back to your book, and I know you have a heart out, so I greatly appreciate you taking the time, David.
No, my
You
pleasure. This is
you
fun.
and Corey both had an appendix to the book. Corey's was his testimony to the House Judiciary Committee. Nadler. Yours was really interesting. It was the speech that Trump gave at Mount Rushmore on July the 4th. Why those two?
Well, his testimony was long. It was an all-day affair. If people didn't get a chance to see it, we wanted them to be able to read and get the flavor of it instead of just talking about it in chapters, which we did. It gives you a full opportunity to read it. And then secondarily, I believe when history is written, when in fact Donald Trump wins this election and he gets reelected, historians are going to look for the pivotal moments of this election cycle. In my opinion, July 3rd, which was the July 4th celebration at Mount Rushmore, the evening of July 3rd, where he gave, quite honestly, I would argue one of the greatest speeches that he's delivered, either as a candidate or as president. And I feel that historically it will be the pivotal speech, and people will go back and they will read that speech. And so I felt it was important, thinking that way, that we put it in the book so that people who didn't get a chance to see it or needed or wanted to be able to reread it or read it for the first time if they heard it, be able to get access to it in the book. So it's an important, I really do think historically it's going to go down as one of the big speeches of his presidency.
New York Times bestselling author David Bossie with co-author Corey Lewandowski. Everybody check out Trump, America First. It is a great read. And tell everybody where they can find you and the book, please.
Follow me at David_Bossie on Twitter. CitizensUnited.org is my organization, and please go there and check out the latest that we're doing. And then you can go get the book at all of your bookstores, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Please just get out and read it. It's a fun book. It's a great read. It's a fast read, but it gives you everything you need when it comes to this election cycle.
David, I'm glad we worked out the gremlins. Greatly appreciate it. Best of luck as we close in on the campaign. Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you, David. Greatly appreciate you taking time. And everybody check out the book. I did have a chance to go through it, and it is a quick read, and it's fantastic. And I love fly on the wall, Politico stuff. I mean, it really is interesting because you hear the conversations, you hear the mannerisms, you hear the real people that we see on our TVs every day. And oftentimes we characterize them based upon what we're reading about on Twitter but these are human beings. And the president is a human being. And so I do find these books very interesting. So special thanks again to David Bossie. We'll be back again next week. We're putting together 2 guests, one of whom was supposed to be this week, but we had to postpone it. And she'll be with us next week. Ooh, just gave a hint. Maybe you know who it is already. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll see you all next week here at Whiskey Politics. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Find us at Ricochet, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Subscribe, like, do all the things, comment, and we'll be back again real soon. Cheers.